Guys, so in this video we're going to be looking at the respray work on this Volkswagen T25 Caravelle van. Now, as you can see from the pictures from when we actually got the van, it's not a bad van, it's pretty straight. It needed a new rear arch putting in it and a little bit of welding on the front arch, but bar that, this was a really clean van. Now, I was hoping to get a lot more in-depth work on this and get some video on the actual repairs and stuff, but we've had a few computer problems and a few problems with the camera, so I'm about to have both of them sorted out. But stay tuned, because in the upcoming videos that we've got coming up, we are going to be getting very into detail, more on the repair side of things. So for this camper van, this couple of videos that we'll be doing, they'll be more focusing on the actual refinishing side of it, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and a few little fundamental tips and tricks as we go along. So these are all some of the panels off the van. We've got all these into the booth, and the first thing we're just doing is popping a bit of 2K high build primer on all the areas that we've repaired, and then we're going to let them flash off, let them dry, which will just stop any future primer that we're putting over the top pulling into those filler areas, and also just help us with shrink back when we actually get the van into paint. It'll just help with shrink back a bit further down the line. So the first thing with these bits and bobs is, where we've done all these repairs, all these little bits of filler work, we're going to pop one nice medium wet coat over those with a nice thick mix. This is 4:1 at the moment, and it's straight 4:1 with the Capsy High build. There's no thinners in at this stage. And then once we've done this first coat, we'll go and mix some more, and we'll mix it at 4:1, but we're going to put around 10 to 20% thinners in it. That's going to mean that if we keep a really tight overlap of about 50-50, we're going to get a really good build. And not only are we going to get a really good build, but with the extra thinners, it's going to mean that we can get a bit of a smoother finish, so we don't have to be sanding and prepping as hard and as harsh on it to actually get these panels smooth, ready for painting. All the repair work that we did with a P120 first, and then we went over all that with a 180 to finish, and then all the panels got sanded down with a 320, which meant for this stage now, like on the backs, we're only actually going to put 2 coats on the backs of these panels, because repair wise they didn't have any, so they don't really need much build. We just want a nice coat of primer, really more than anything as a sealer coat, because if any of you guys have done one of these T25 campers before, unless it's been resprayed, you'll know as standard these have barely any paint on them. So we want to make sure that for the future and for this customer going forward, that he's got plenty of paint on there, so he's got plenty of protection against the elements and against the rust, and obviously against any damp or anything that's caused with it being a camper. And it, the interior does get hot and cold a lot, which can cause condensation and affect your exterior panel work. So we want to make sure that it's got really good, nice coats, nicely sealed up, and overall it ends up a really nice, clean job, and we're happy with it, as well as the customer at the end of this work. So you'll see there, I've gone and spot primed all the areas where we've done the actual repair work. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the first coat on the rear panels, on the rear of the panel, sorry, just to get one coat on them out of the way. Now, because I haven't got any double stands at this shop, it was a bit awkward, so we just had to improvise a little bit by using some 2-inch tape just to hold these 2 doors on here. For paintwork wise, for the actual top coat stage, that wouldn't have been doable, because there might have been a chance that we might not have got good enough coverage in areas. But for the actual primer stage, that's fine. And you'll also notice that I have masked off the internal parts of the door there. Now, all the window winders, all the mechanisms, all the glass and everything has been stripped from the door. The main purpose of masking those up is because no matter how hard sometimes you blow these doors out, and you can put Hoover and the airline in there at the same time to try and, agitate any bits that are in there, as well as sucking them out. You can go with the high pressure air to try and get them out. Quite often you still do end up with dust and dirt and contaminants and maybe bits of insulation and that sort of thing that are stuck floating around inside them doors, and the last thing that we want is them flying out when we get a spray gun around it, and getting in the paint job and ruining our paint job. So for me, I prefer to mask those inner sections off, Behind the door card, obviously where they're not going to get shown, where there's not going to be any edges that show, so that when this van's rebuilt, it's nice and clean inside and outside on the panels. And also during the paintwork stage, it means that we can try and take an extra little step, if you will, to try and keep those dusts and any debris or anything that's inside them doors that we couldn't get out. It just gives us that extra little bit of peace of mind. There's just another barrier that's going to stop the dirt and contamination from getting into our paintwork. It's not something that I used to do a lot, but it's something that going forward that I'm doing more and more because I'm figuring out more ways to try and keep the dust down, more ways to try and get a cleaner job. And at the end of the day, if you can get a nice clean job at your primer stage, a nice clean job at your base coat stage, and then a nice clean job at your clear coat stage, it all adds up to that final finish where we're all trying for that optimum off the gun finish so we can get that nice clean job to save us time with flat and polishing work and stuff like that. Okay guys, so at this stage we've got the spot primer work done and we've also put a full coat over the backs of all the panel work. So now what we're going to concentrate on is putting a full coat, nice wet coat with a good 50-50 overlap so we get that nice build over the actual faces of the panels. I can just see there I have noticed that unfortunately I have missed a little bit of a dent, so that's something that we're going to have to rectify after we get this out of the booth. But what I've actually done with that since, as we got it out of the booth, put a little skim of stopper in that section, and then I'll wet that before we actually get it in the booth and paint it. So all we're going to concentrate on here now is getting a real nice wet, even finish over the rest of these panels. The rest of the panel work, as I said, has had a 320 down, and we're going to go for putting this full wet coat, one more full wet coat, and then the final wet coat, which you'll see at the end. So we're not going too OTT over these panels really. We just want enough build on there so that we can try and sand all these panels down without too many rub throughs back to the original paint or back to any metal work anywhere. So that will reduce us a bit of time, you know, putting any etch primer down and stuff like that. Now, the Capsy High Build primer that we're using is a really good primer. It sounds nice. And you can also see when you're using this stuff that you don't really need a guide coat because it does change a shade as you're sanding it. So you don't really need to do too much work. And obviously on a job this size, because you don't need to put the guide coat down because the actual colour change with the primer, you can actually save yourself a lot of cost on guide coating a big job like this. When you're rubbing it down, when you're trying to block out any repairs, because you really can see well with this primer where the actual lows and highs are and where any little mist scratches are, because it does change a good few shades down. The other thing that you'll notice is that I'm still using this little budget ANI 1.8 gravity fed spray gun. Now I have to say that for a little £30 spray gun that I bought, it's done the Escort respray. If you watch that one, you'll have seen us do the whole primer stage in that. And I've done every bit of paint work and every bit of primer work that I've done since then in the shop with this little gun. And this little gun's going pretty well, and it's going pretty strong actually. I've kept it, you know, made sure I cleaned it out well in between each job. But I've had no problems with how it's spraying. I've had no problems with the cups deforming like you get with some cheap guns. And it really has cleaned out nice and kept spraying exactly the same as it has so far out of the box. So for you guys that may be doing a bit more on the DIY side, or might be just after a cheap, reliable, budget gravity fed spray gun for doing your high build work, then I have to say this little 1.8 ANI budget gun is the way forward. For £30, I really cannot fault this spray gun for putting primer down at all. So we're cutting out to the final wet coat. So this is the third full wet coat that we're putting on these panels, and this will be the third and final wet coat. Now before I put this final wet coat on, I went round the back of the doors and also the back of the rear door and put a wet coat again over those. Now they've only had two coats because they're only going to need a really light rub down. They've not had any sealer work, they've not had any filler work on them, so we don't need any build to those. So this final coat now is literally going to be our finishing coat, ready for us to get cracking on these panels with probably around about a P400 or a P500 and get these prepped up ready for paint. If you've got any areas like where we've done any of the filler work, what I'll do with those is I'll get a bit of P320 on the block, block over those little areas where we've done the filler work, just to make sure that they're nice and flat and they're nicely smoothed into, blended into the existing look of the vehicle. And then we'll run over the whole panel work then with, let's say, probably a P400 for this job. We want this job really nice and clean. We want to give it a nice fresh look for the customer. This van is now into paint and is being rebuilt, and it does look really nice and clean, and a nice straight van, really, I have to say. I'm happy with it. Customer's been down, had a look at it, and he's happy with it as well. And we have got more videos coming on it. We'll be getting more at the paintwork stage, probably trying out the Sart 5000, and also we'll be getting a bit of work on the bumpers and the grills and stuff, because we're doing those in a 2K satin black. So I hope you guys have enjoyed watching this one. As I said earlier, I'm sorry we couldn't get a little bit more into detail with the repair work on this one, but in the upcoming videos we will be getting more into depth on all aspects of the repair work, the masking, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and also trying to answer a few questions that we've had from viewers as we've been going along on the channel, and it'll give me a bit of time to get a bit of video footage of actually answering those questions, like how to backmask doors off and that sort of thing, or how I backmask doors off. And get a bit more into detail with that for you guys. So thank you very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like and give us a subscribe. If you're an existing viewer, thanks again for coming back and watching. We'll have plenty more videos upcoming over this week and over the next few weeks. We've got a few different videos coming up. Another respray, bit of work on a Volkswagen Scirocco roof that we'll be doing, and we'll be doing that one fully start to finish for you guys, so you can see all the aspects, all the products we're using, and everything how we do it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon, guys.